Hey everybody, this is Alex Merced from alexmercedcoder.com, and what this video is going to be is I'm going to basically build a very basic to-do list with SolidJS. If you're not familiar with SolidJS, it's a new front-end framework. It came out, I think, mid-2020, something like that. I still don't think yet, still not 1.0 yet, but basically what it is, and the creator did comment on my article about it, like I wrote an article about it the other day. If you go to my blog, actually it's going to be on my dev.2 version of my blog. Okay, let me just see here. Yada 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 yada. Where's my last comment? Here goes Svelte. So basically I wrote this article where I compare SolidJS as like React meets Svelte. And the reason I do that is because React, it has like React syntax, like JSX, has a very React functional components type feel. But on the other hand, it does what Svelte does, where it compiles the code to plain JavaScript, HTML, CSS. So in the sense that like you're not shipping a runtime or a framework to the browser, yet still using React syntax. Because when you use React, you are shipping like the whole React library to the client. So I write this big article on it. Well, it's not that big, but I write an article on it. And then in the comments, the creator comes in and chimes in right here, there it is. Okay, so Solid's inspiration mostly came from Knockout.js, which Knockout was like a big framework back when these kind of frameworks started like coming into existence. So these were like when like things like Backbone.js, Knockout.js, these types of things were sort of, you know, around. I never heard of Surplus. I may have to go look into Surplus. But the performance is stellar. Okay. Okay, so I might have to go read that article. Okay. And they definitely did some good work to improve their performance. Okay, so this is just so if you wanted to kind of curious like what inspired Ryan to make this framework, there's some comments from the man himself. But basically, he created this framework, Solid, and what it does is what I just said. It allows you to write very React-like syntax. It does work a little bit differently, and in places where it works differently, I like. Because one of the things about React is that with React, the whole component re-renders every time you change state. So that means like you write your function as a component as a function, and that whole function just reruns. Okay, and this is why you have to use things like the use effect hook to kind of like say, hey, I don't want this to run every time this function runs. Okay. Here, like the logic is the opposite. You specify which parts of your function to run by calling them effects, and JSX expressions are by default effects. So that's, we'll get into that. We'll get into all that. But that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to build a to-do list using Solid, and I'll do a little bit of styling with Bulma. Okay, because I've been, I wouldn't say doing a lot of work with Bulma lately, but I've been dabbling a little bit more. Okay, I don't want to spend too much time on CSS. So if I remember correctly, the way we create a Solid app is we do npm init solid, and then I think it's app. So it's Solid, then you have like two templates like app and then app.ts if you want to use TypeScript. Npm init solid app, and then you put the name of the app, so we'll just say to-do list. Okay, and let's try that out. Yep, there he goes. So it's building out our app. So just like a create React app. Because SolidJS is so new, I'm probably not going to add a template to it to Merced SpinUp, and just recommend that people use the default generator, just because it's probably still going to change a lot before it hits 1.0. And, you know, maintaining all those templates can be, you know, every once in a while I have to go in there, like update all the libraries, whatnot. So I prefer that they generally have like a nice stable API first. But I probably maybe I'll see if they already have like where their starter template is on JavaScript and just add that to Merced SpinUp, so that way it's there. It's an option. Kind of like what I did with the Snowpack templates. Okay, to-do list. So I did the thing. Now I'm gonna cd into that folder, cd into to-do list. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to do an npm start. It works just like React for the most part. Like when you first use it, you're going to feel like it's a lot like React. Even the starter page is going to look a lot like the React starter page. Okay, so you get the idea. And I'm just gonna do everything, and you see like the folder structure is the same, source, app.js. Okay, so you should feel right at home if you're using React. Okay, and what we're going to do is we're going to build a to-do list. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to clean out the app component. I don't need any of this. Okay, and then I'm just going to give it an h1, saying this is our to-do list. Okay, and I'm going to put in a div here. Let me think about that. Yeah, this is where I'm going to put in my to-dos. We'll have a UL in there, and the UL will loop over the to-dos. Okay, and we'll come back to the form later on. But first, we need to kind of initiate our to-do data. Okay, our state. So what we need to do is import. I'm going to get rid of this whole CVG import, and instead import. And then what I want to import is create signal. So basically, it's not really called state. They're called signals. They're variables that signal that something has changed from SolidJS. Okay, and that's where things get kind of different. So the idea here is you are sort of triggering an event when you change state, versus React, when you run that sort of set state function, it's just triggering a rerun of the functional component. So instead of triggering an event and there's things listening for the event, you just have this sort of passive rerun of your component function that just then, and then the virtual DOM kind of takes the mantle of making sure that it doesn't do sort of redundant changes. But there's a cost to having that virtual DOM there. So you have a simpler API, but then you have this virtual DOM, and the virtual DOM has to run and do comparisons to optimize, which makes it faster than if it wasn't there. But if you could avoid just having it all entirely and still get the same result, that's faster. And that's kind of like what Svelte and SolidJS do, where basically you're linking sort of template to variables, and when those variables change, they trigger an event that triggers an update of that particular template. Okay, not necessarily a rerun of the entire sort of component or rebuild. Okay, so I bring in this create signal thing, and that's generally how we do stuff. Okay, so in that case, what I want to do is create a signal, and it works just like use effect. So basically, I just say const. Okay, if you want to be like extra explicit about what's actually going on, it's probably better to name it this way, like get to-dos set to-dos. Okay, because really the two things you're getting is no longer like a variable and a function. You're actually getting two functions, a getter and a setter. So equals create signal, and basically here we just pass in what we want the initial value to be, and we'll just say breakfast lunch, and we'll set it up so we can add dinner. Okie dokie. Okay, so then let's just first render these like we would in normal React. So again, it would just be normal JSX expression where I would just say get to-dos. Okay, and since I think in the JSX I don't have to actually invoke the function if I remember correctly, so I could just map. Get map. Well, I could. Technically, there's no reason why I couldn't. Get to-dos dot map. And then I gotta put in the parentheses. So that would just be to-do. And then we're just returning an li with the to-do in it. There you go. Okay. So let's take a look, see if that worked. Nope, maybe I do have to invoke it. Yep, there we go. Okay, cool. Breakfast, lunch. So again, yeah, these are getter and setter functions, so you have to treat them like functions instead of a variable. So you see how you had to do get to-dos dot map, yada yada. Cool. Okay. Now that we got that, let's talk about how we can make it where we can update the variable. Okay, so let's make a form. So I'll put it under, actually below the UL. Okay, let's create a form. Okay, it's good to use form tags. I used to like be of the mindset like, why use form tags when I can just use inputs without a form tag and not have to worry about prevent default. But I've been studying a lot about accessibility lately, and it is important to use form tags because like accessible readers for people with different challenges, for sensory challenges for consuming your website, the tools that they use are going to depend on the semantic tools you use. So using like semantic tags like header, footer, using form tags, using button tags, things that explicitly sort of imply the intent are going to allow them to be able to easily use that website. And if you decide, hey, I just want to do everything as a div, my buttons will be divs, everything's going to be divs, because you can do that, then what you need to do is you need to use like area tags. So like where you can set like the type, so that way you can say, hey, this div is meant to be a button. So that way readers know, okay, hey, this is a button. So that's something to keep in mind. Easiest thing to avoid having to do all that, use form tags. So we're going to have an input, type equals text. Okay, type equals text, placeholder equals new to do. And I mean, I'll put a name property, but it's not going to really matter for this particular form. Okie dokie. And okay. And I just realized I want to probably make state for this form. Good times. Okay. And then an input submit, type submit. Value new to do. Okay, let's just take a look at the form showing up. The form is showing up good. Okay. Now, my only issue now is doing the form. So I'm going to assume we're going to just follow the same pattern as we would with React. Okay, so I'm going to create another signal. Const get form set form equals create signal. And essentially what we're going to do here is actually this will be an object. And actually there's only one input, so we'll just do it as a string. We'll keep it simple. Okay, and then I'll create a handle change function. So const handle change equals event. Okay. And that's going to be set form, and we're going to set form to event.target.value, because I'm not doing an object thing, so we don't have to do that whole like property event target.name thing. Okay, cool. So that should do what I need to do. I should bind the form, and I need to bind the value to the form. Value equals, okay, get form. Okay, and let me just double check that that still like does what we expect in React and locks up the form. No, it does not. Okay, makes sense because it's not necessarily running that line again. Because it's not constantly binding it to that value. Okay, that's cool. And let's see here, handle change equals handle change. Okay. And then also what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna console log get form each time, because I am curious. Let's open up my terminal. Console log, so far that looks all fine. Type in some letters. Oh wait, what did I just write over here? Handle change is supposed to be on change. You can tell I literally just woke up like a few minutes before I started this video. Okay, let's just do that. Interesting. That is not changing on the input. Did I put on the wrong input? Let's see here. On change equals handle change. Technically that should run this function. Which should do set form. Okay. I think that's fine. Console.log get form. Oh. We're not even seeing the console log at all, so that means the function's not running. Input type in the form. There's the on change event. Let's take a look at the solid documentation. Okay, let's see here. Does it have anything about forms? Components, JSX rendering, evaluation, attributes and props, yada yada yada, entry, events, here we go. Functions, yeah, so it should work the same way. Being a function, the compiler will delegate events where possible. Events can be composed in a bubble. If you wish to bind a value to events, pass an array handler. Instead, in the second argument will be passed to your event handler as the first argument. This can improve performance in large lists when the event is delegated. Okay, that's kind of a neat feature. The delegation solution works well with web components, spreads. Okay. Each item on click. I get that. Value to events pass an array handler instead of this. But theoretically I should be able to still pass the normal thing. Let me just see if I find another example here. Show. Just looking for any event somewhere. Suspense. I might end up just using refs. Create a console. Let's see how they do ref my div. Okay, here you only have to do create a variable. That's nice. So we might just end up going that route. But let's just try this one more time. So on change equals, and I will do this. Or did I spell it differently? Handle change, handle change. Now, well, let's see what happens if I change the syntax. And we say function handle change. Does that affect the behavior? Because I saw that's kind of how they did it in there. Okay, I did see the console log, but it didn't happen until after I hit new to do. Okay, that's where it happens. Interesting. Did I put it on the form by accident? Not a... Because that should be an on submit event. But okay, so let's just do the on submit event. So it is changing. We saw the console log. Looks like actually when I went out of focus. Yes. Okay. Got it. Okay, I see. Because React is kind of like firing off that change literally on every keystroke. Okay, so it's working. It's doing the thing. Okay, I wonder if it was doing the thing before. So let me just go back to that. And let's try this again. Yeah, it was working before. Okay. So I'm not losing my mind. Okay, so then we can create the handle submit function. Const handle submit equals event set event.prevent default, so that way it doesn't do that whole refresh thing. Okay, and then all we're going to do is do set to dos, and it's just going to be get to dos, or actually, it's going to be a new array, and we're going to start off with spreading the get to dos, the existing to dos, and adding the new to do, which would just be the get form. Okay, and then that should do that. Okay, and then since this changes, so basically the way this kind of works is that even though I never use this term called create effect, because there's create signals, so create signals are like your state, then just create effect. Effect means if any of the state used or any of the signals that are used in this effect change, run this function again. Under the hood, this JSX expression is already an effect, so I didn't have to create a separate one. So anytime get to dos updates, because I used get to dos, I used this signal inside this effect, it'll update this expression, because this in itself gets built into its own little function. Okay, very cool. Okay, so let's see if that works. I think that should work, so let's try it out. Dinner. Still refreshed. Oh, but I never did add the submit handler. Form. I have to actually add the event. On submit equals handle submit. Okay, now that should work. Dinner. That works. There we go. Okay, I should also probably clean out the form. So let's do this. If I go to set form to an empty string again, let's see if that works. Okay, dinner, and that works. There you go. Okay, very neat. Okay, so again, really not different at all. This at least was not different really at all from how I would do it in React. Okay, works the same way. A couple little nuances along the way, and the cool thing is that you can pass an array to event handlers. That's pretty neat. Okay, because usually you only get the event, so you have to like get the data from somewhere else, but here you can actually pass the data in. That's pretty neat. Okay, cool. Let's style this thing. So let's go bring in Bulma, and in this case we're using npm, so I can just do it that way. So let's go to the documentation here. Overview, start. Okay, we're going to use npm, so npm install Bulma. Okay, paste. Oh wait, that's right, the server's still running. So Control C. Oops, Control C. There we go. Install Bulma. Okay, so now that's there. Okay, so now I should just be able to be like import Bulma, and that should make a difference. Okay. Oh, I gotta run the server. That would make a difference. Doesn't like something. Let's take a look. Import Sass files. You first need to install node Sass. Oh, boo. Okay. I don't want to install node Sass because that's kind of like deprecated at the moment. So npm install just Sass. That's that. Hopefully that fixes the deal. Oh, it's really is this gonna? Yep, good. Okay, good. Cool. And you can see like the change in font already. So that means Bulma is taking effect. Okay, now let's just go and do some styling. Okay, so my h1, I'm gonna give this a class of title is 1. That means it's like the largest title. Okay. And then our LIs, I'll give this a class of subtitle is 2, again making them the second highest, largest thing. Okay, we should start seeing some changes there. There we go. Dinner. Cool. Okay, so you're starting to see some pretty easy changes. Again, this it's just like any other CSS framework. You just add the right classes. Customize columns, forms. Okay, let's go change the input. Okay. Bulma input, CSS class meant. So we just need to add the class input. Okay. So in this case, I'll just add that class. Class equals input. And that should be like this and this. Now we'll just copy that same class to the other input. And let's take a look. Yep. Okay, so there we go. Like that's styled, although these buttons have gotten a little wacky looking. So let me take a look at what do they do for like a submit button? Class field body input, class input, type submit, looking for the submit button. Okay, I'm assuming they're just going to want to, they're just going to want me to use a button. So in that case, let me go to elements, button. I think it's just button. Yep, button. Okay, so let's go back to my code. I don't like the width of that input, so I'm going to change that as well. I'll just do that with an inline style. So I'll just say style equals. Okay, and then in here we're just going to say I want the width to be 80%. Okay, and then on this I want this to be button. And then if I refresh, there we go, and that looks a bit better. Still probably too big, so let's make this like 50%, and that looks more reasonable. Okay, there you go. Okay, so like that's some basics. Again, we didn't do anything fancy with the styling, but you kind of saw like how I implemented Bulma real quick and kind of looked through the documentation. Same thing with SolidJS, and this is building a to-do list with SolidJS. But as you can see, things don't change too much relative to like doing it in React, but you get a few cool extra benefits if you look through the documentation. Suspense is kind of already available out of the gate. I haven't really used Suspense before, so I can't speak to it, but I know some people really like it. It's still an experimental feature in React, so yeah, check it out. Check out SolidJS. I think it's cool. I think it's on to something. I'll see you all later on.